Welcome, everybody, to Data and AI Summit. It's going to be a great one. And today, I'd like to introduce Jacob Wren, Chief Technologist at AI Squared, and Ian Sotnick, who is the Head of Product at AI Squared. And they'll be talking about introducing D-Lite, a lightweight chatbot model based on Dolly. So, welcome.
Thank you. All right, well, thank you all so much for coming during your lunch hour. Truthfully, I'm shocked we got such a turnout, but I guess the buffet better watch out when the session gets out. So, good afternoon. It's our privilege today to introduce D-Lite, which is a lightweight interactive chatbot based on Dolly. In this talk, we're going to dive into the promise of lightweight chatbots for enterprise use cases and show how AI Squared can serve as a bridge between those chatbots and end-user workflows. I don't think it's a controversial statement to say that 2023 is going to be seen as an inflection point, both in the real and perceived importance of AI for the enterprise. I mean, just looking around at the titles of different sessions during this conference, I'm surprised that it hasn't been renamed to AI and Data Summit because of the prioritization of AI this year. The development of generative AI over the past few years, which led to this point, has really made models with tens or even hundreds of billions of parameters fairly commonplace. For example, OpenAI's GPT-3.5, which of course was the engine behind the earliest stages of ChatGPT, has 175 billion parameters. And while it's true that the bigger LLMs become, the more generally useful they become, we would argue that using the biggest, newest LLM isn't always the best course of action for every organization. First, as you'd expect, big models require substantial resources to train, tune, and deploy. It's, of course, easiest to point to just an OpenAI endpoint and call it a day, but that really isn't an option for some of the largest enterprise organizations where data security is truly an imperative. This also needs to be a consideration for organizations that operate in resource-constrained environments. For example, in the maritime industry, where truly the compute you have available to you is on board the ship. Second is the fact that general-purpose large language models are really likely not even all that necessary for the typical enterprise employee. So ChatGPT lets users really do anything they want, whether it's compose a haiku or write parody song lyrics. But is that really useful for your average cubicle dweller? I mean, really, what's more useful in the typical enterprise use case is a question answering type bot that is proficient in a fairly narrow range of tasks. So therefore, we are working under the assumption that a chatbot only really needs to be an expert in a comparably narrow domain as compared to our massive LLMs to be of some value. And Databricks addressed these issues by developing one of the stars of this year's conference, Dolly. So in a nutshell, Dolly's success shows that a smaller and older model architecture can be effectively fine-tuned and perform well relative to the largest LLMs. So keeping GPT-3.5's 175 billion parameters in context, it's absolutely amazing that Dolly can be tuned to be a genuinely useful chat agent, despite its first version having just 6 billion parameters. Functionally, this means that organizations can develop a performant chatbot which is relatively fast and cheap to train, deploy, and update, can respond quickly to prompts, and of course can be used on lower-end hardware. So needless to say, we at AI Squared were absolutely blown away by the practicality and performance of Dolly. And this inspired us to take the small LLM intuition a step further to see if even older, smaller models could yield useful chatbots. The results of our first experiments led us to develop Dolly-Lite, or D-Lite for short, which is a chatbot with a high degree of interactivity that you'd expect of ChatGPT or Dolly, despite being based on the 124 million parameter version of GPT-2. Further, we were able to fine-tune D-Lite using the Alpaca dataset on a single T4 GPU and Databricks for less than $15. Our key takeaway from creating D-Lite version 1 is that model size, while it's extremely important, is not as important as a well designed and curated dataset in order to create a useful chatbot. Unfortunately, at this point, there really weren't any good datasets available to tune an interactive chatbot that were licensed for commercial use. So basically, we were stuck at this point using D-Lite version 1 just for research purposes. And that was the case, at least, until Databricks generously built out the Databricks Dolly 15K dataset, which, as the name implies, is a set of 15,000 prompt response pairs that are perfect for developing interactive chatbots. But, and of course best of all, it's licensed for commercial use, meaning that any models built with it can also be used commercially. Further, Databricks made this available on Hugging Face, which makes it extremely straightforward to use in practice. As soon as the Dolly 15K dataset was released, we built out D-Lite version 2. This is an update of the D-Lite version 1 family, which at this point had models with 124 million, 355 million, 774 million, and 1.5 billion parameters. By using the Dolly 15K dataset to tune these models instead of the restrictive Alpaca dataset, we were able to license the D-Lite version 2 family for commercial use. We've been thrilled to see the use of D-Lite v2 in the machine learning community really accelerate, especially recently, as shown by the nearly 3,000 downloads of D-Lite v2 from Hugging Face over the past month alone. So now that we have a chatbot that's licensed for commercial purposes, we need to prepare it for integration into an organization. To maximize the usefulness of a small LLM, we follow a two-step procedure to prepare it for a use case. As I mentioned before, the importance of high quality and crucially specialized tuning data during this procedure really can't be overstated. The first step is to train the model on a domain-specific data so that it can learn the terminology that is typical of that domain. This part of the training process is relatively straightforward as it doesn't really require any human annotation. The second step is to train the model on relevant question-answer pairs. This reinforces the model's ability to exhibit that interactive chat characteristic of ChatGPT and Dolly that is, of course, a really central tenet of being a chat bot. Further, this helps the model just fill out into a specialized agent. And we'll discuss this procedure in much more detail during the demonstration portion of this presentation. But still, at the end of the day, once we've completed that training process, all we have is a model, a chatbot. We still need to deploy it and integrate it somehow into an end user workflow to help make it actually useful, actually valuable to those end users. And this is where AI Squared comes in. So AI Squared can flexibly integrate machine learning models or data sets into end user workflows to empower them to make the best decision possible, whether they work in sales, logistics, national security, or really anywhere in between. In the case of interactive chatbots and large language models writ large, AI Squared serves as a kind of bridge between the chatbot, which could be a massive LLM like Falcon 4DB or even any of the OpenAI models deployed in the cloud, all the way down to a D-Lite model running right here on my laptop. And the end user, of course, at the end of the bridge, who is working just in their typical day-to-day tasks in the browser. In this diagram, you can see that the user provides some input prompt to AI Squared. AI Squared then takes that input prompt and combines it with information from the web page. Essentially, you can think of it as the context of that end user's workflow. So this could be names, dates, even code snippets, and combines those into a more well-rounded prompt, which then gets passed to the large language model, which then, of course, results in a better response being sent back to that end user. Additionally, AI Squared can also make it easy to get feedback from the end user on the performance of the large language model, so how well, how completely, how accurately is it actually answering the response or the prompt from the user. And then, of course, also solicit correct responses from the user in order to allow them to iteratively improve their chatbot. So now I'll go ahead and turn it over to Jacob, who will show you a little bit about how we've trained D-Lite and, of course, an example of a fine-tuned model. Jacob, take it away.
Thanks, Ian. So let's get out of the PowerPoint and let's get into the demo portion of this, this presentation. So first off, we have released D-Lite, both version 1 and version 2, all of the models on Hugging Face. You can go ahead and download them there. But we also have a GitHub repo that we've open sourced and contains all of the training code to allow you to train your own version of D-Lite, V1, V2, with whichever base model under the hood that you'd like to use. So our organization is AI Squared Inc., and then the repository name is DLite-official for anybody who wants to go in, really get their hands dirty and train and work with these models. Just to show you a little bit about how the repository works, we trained all of our D-Lite models in Databricks. So there's a Databricks notebook if you clone the repository that allows you to train these models. So it sets everything up. It does everything that you need it to do. By default, it will train version 2. Can everybody see that? Does that need to be increased in size? Okay, good. It will train version 2, so it will use the Databricks Dolly 15K dataset, and it will actually train the 124 parameter one, so it will train the smallest one. If you see here, using GPT-2, which is the key for the smallest GPT-2 model from Hugging Face. If you want to use another one, say you wanted the 355 parameter model, just make that GPT-2 medium. You could also use other models under the hood if you'd like to do that as well. And then if you want to change the data set, say you want to train one on the Alpaca data set, you would change this here to the key for the Alpaca data set from Hugging Face as well. But like I said, this can be trained off of a single GPU. We trained all of our models on a single GPU that we have in production, or in Hugging Face now. So as part of the title of this presentation, we highlighted how we're integrating these models into end user workflows. And I wanted to show you that, how we're doing that with the AI Squared platform and our AI Squared extension, how we're making basically any web page interactive with these models. So for example, I'm just going to pull up the Data and AI Summit webpage, the homepage for it. And you can see here we have the AI Squared extension installed, which has the ability to interact with all of our models which we have deployed. So I can interact with any one of the D-Lite models, version 1, version 2. Let's go ahead and interact with version 2, 1.5. And let's just say, ask it how it's doing. Now what this is doing is it's reaching out and hitting an endpoint. Great. So we can see that we have now an interactive screen where we're actually integrating the results of a chatbot directly into the end user's application. In this case, we're simply using the Data and AI Summit webpage. But this is essentially web page agnostic. If you have an internal tool that you're using, you build your own custom chatbot using D-Lite or using Dolly, or say you're even using the OpenAI endpoints, you can then go and utilize AI Squared to bring that chatbot into your environment. Now, as we said before, the organizations and the customers that we have who are trying to use D-Lite, they're trying to use their models on their own proprietary data that they want to keep close to them. So they're not reaching out and hitting OpenAI's endpoints because of security risks, all of those problems there. These models that I have here in this extension are are generalized. So they're not tuned specifically for, let's say, Data and AI Summit. So if I ask this model here, which is the version 2, 355 million parameter model, what are some of the most exciting topics being talked about at Data and AI Summit this year? Going to see what it says, but more than likely, it's going to bring back an answer that may be partially correct, but most of the time it's going to hallucinate. See how long. Sometimes it really likes to think about its answers. Sometimes it does it in a couple of seconds. So I can always, ask it to stop and restart it. There we go. So just by glancing at this, yeah, this is not right, right? It's trying really hard, right? So I'm going to show you a specialized chatbot based off of that same model that you just saw, the version 2, 355 million parameter model, that's undergone the same process that we're taking to our customers to show you exactly how we build a customized, specialized chatbot that works with your data. So what did we do, and how did we do it, and how much did it cost? So what we did is we built a specialized chatbot specific to Data and AI Summit, this year's Data and AI Summit. How we did that is we scraped the web page, the homepage for Data and AI Summit, the page that you just saw. We also took all of the links available in that page and scraped those. And we took all of the links in all of those pages and we scraped those as well. That gave us a fairly large corpus of text, which we could then use to fine-tune our model on. So that first fine-tuning stage basically just allows that model to learn the specific terminology, the jargon that's used at Data and AI Summit. Then secondly, we use ChatGPT to generate question and answer pairs to kind of seed that model and seed D-Lite in better understanding what kinds of questions and what kinds of answers are to be provided in this kind of context. So next question, okay, how much did that cost, right? So it cost about $10 on Databricks to do the entire thing, including our ChatGPT cost for that. Now, how long did it take? It took me one day. It took me about 6 hours. I had a lunch in the middle. It took me about 6 hours to actually train this thing. So within a day, I had a chatbot ready to go that had all of the knowledge of the Data and AI Summit inside it, ready to go, ready to be interactive. Okay, how easy is it to use? So this is a notebook where I utilize that model. So I'm going to load it from Hugging Face. Right now we have it behind a private listing. So I had to log into Hugging Face and do that. After importing the Transformers pipeline, it's one line of code to be able to use this model. Pulls the model, pulls all of the pre-processing scripts, all of the data engineering that goes into how the model does prompt engineering, and everything there. So one line of code to be able to utilize the model. Okay, great. How does it perform? Utilizing this model on a set of prompts that range pretty broadly, but still talk about Data and AI Summit. So tell me about Data and AI Summit this year. What makes Databricks such a great platform? You know, all the way down to down here, where we have information about each of the individual speakers at Data and AI Summit. So tell me about Ian Sotnick and Jacob Wren and what they do at AI Squared. So let's see how the model actually performs on all of these prompts. So down here, we have the responses from the model itself. I'll let you read through the first couple. I'm not going to read everything to you on the slides. But what you'll notice is this model is much more specialized, much more helpful, and much more accurate at answering that very domain-specific data about Data and AI Summit this year. It even has information about tools such as MLflow. What are the best ways to get started with Databricks? And then, again, tell me about Ian Sotnick and Jacob Wren. It has a good answer. It knows that we are co-founders of AI Squared and that we are focused on developing large-scale machine learning pipelines and applications. So it knows all of that information that's been distilled into it from all of that data that we've used. Now, just to show you that I'm not lying and have this all prompted and ready to go, I'm going to send that same prompt that I sent the original 355 version 2 model down it. Now, as long as I don't have any Python kernel issues, this should run in a couple of seconds. Some of the most exciting topics being discussed at Data and AI Summit include the potential for large language models. Okay, great, we're here. And their potential to take AI mainstream, the future of data and AI, the importance of open source community, and emerging trends such as Apache Spark, Data Lake, MLflow, and Delta sharing. Everybody agree that's a pretty good answer? Not bad for 1/3 of a billion parameter model, right? Well, like I said, this model is currently under a private endpoint, but in the vein of open source and making it available to everybody here to use it, I'm going to go ahead and make this model public. So unfortunately, because we use ChatGPT to generate those question answer pairs, this isn't available for commercial use, but everybody is free to use this model now to help them go about their Data and AI Summit, kind of give them summaries of everything that they want to learn about, some of the best sessions, all of that. Then additionally, I'm also going in and making those data sets that we use to train it public. So if you guys want to try to beat us at our own game, feel free. Right? And with that, I thank you for coming to this session. I know it's about lunchtime, so I know everybody's kind of hungry. And thank you for coming out. We'll be here to answer questions. Yes, sir.
So how are you measuring precision?
Yeah, so we're using I'm going to butcher the name, but the Eleuther AI evaluation harness for that. Because it's really hard to evaluate large language models in that capacity, they have a very good set of metrics and tasks. It's the Eleuther AI LLM evaluation harness. So here, do you have that available?
It's up there now, yeah.
It's up there now. So these are the metrics for our models as well. So naturally, our models do not perform as well as Dolly or Falcon, but they're not designed to. They're designed to be seeded to be very, very specific agents for specific use cases.
So is that part of framework?
So this here is the LLM evaluation. What is it?
Open LLM.
There we go.
This is the Open LLM leaderboard from Hugging Face, and this is just to show a side-by-side comparison of some of our non-specialist D-Lite models versus some of the Dolly family versus the current open source leader, which is the Falcon 40B Instruct.
And this is all available on Hugging Face in that space as well. And we have our other models queued for evaluation too. Not with MPT 30 billion yet. No, that one is unfortunately too new for us to have run everything on.
Can you talk a little bit about your training setup, like how many GPUs, what
Yeah, absolutely. So for the original training that we did, the ones that we've actually released, those have all been trained on single GPUs. So for the 124 and 355 million parameters models, those were trained off of single T4s, and then we upped that to a single V100 for the other sizes, just because we were having some issues with memory. So for inference here, what you just saw, that was running on a single A10, and then for the ones that you saw that were in the extension, those were running off of dual K80s. However, all models of the V2 family were all deployed to those same two K80s. So the memory is really not the problem there. We just wanted to make sure that inference was fast enough. Take some over here. Any questions?
You mentioned the step where you use ChatGPT to generate question answers from scraped text. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we did is for every essentially document, or if there was a natural break in the text, so if there's, say, like a paragraph and then a few lines and then a new paragraph, we would break that up into one paragraph and then the other paragraph as separate documents. And what we would do is we would then send that text along with some prompt engineering saying, what are some questions that you could ask about this to ChatGPT? And then once we got that, we would then send that question along with the context to ChatGPT to say, using this text, answer the question. And that gave us our question answer pairs.
Jacob, there's a question in the back there.
Question in the back?
Yeah, thank you. In order to fine-tune these models on a single GPU, do you have to load them in 4-bit, 8-bit precisions? Did you try to use some specific techniques?
Yeah, so we used 16-bit. Yeah, so it was pretty much about half the size as you would use it if you just downloaded it from Hugging Face.
And you're fine-tuning all the layers?
I'm sorry?
Are you fine-tuning all the layers?
Yes, the entire model. Mm-hmm.
What's your strategy for using ChatGPT to create the question answer pairs?
Could you elaborate on that?
Like, what was your prompting like?
Oh, yeah, so the prompting was something along the lines of, here is a document. What questions could you generate from this? Or like, what questions would you ask about this document if you wanted to get the most information from it? And then we would then get some questions from there. And then we would then send the question seeded in such a way such as like, here is a question about the document below, question, here is the document from which this question was derived, document. Please provide a succinct answer to this question with the information, or using the information provided. Thank you. Yeah, so we did not use a vector database. We essentially split these web pages up along lines that made some logical sense. So if we had a really long document or a really long web page, there were often breaks within the page that would be multiple lines, or there would be some images and things like that. So we would take out the documents as individual paragraphs or sets of paragraphs that were kind of logically grouped together.
If organizations are concerned about sending their data to ChatGPT,
Mm-hmm.
do you have a way of generating those question answer pairs without?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're working on that with some of the open source LLMs. As they get more powerful, we're getting better results with those. But a lot of the times, it is useful for an organization that has some level of question and answer pairs already in their corpus. So, for example, if you're working in like an educational situation or an educational organization, they already have tests. They already have documents that contain, here's a question, here's the expected answer. Or if you're working in a call center, right? You're trying to kind of automate the process for, a person is on the phone with you, you have these questions from them. Well, the response from the person who is on the phone with them is a good way to start training those things. So right now we are in a relatively limited set of environments where either the organization is going to spend some time and work to actually generate that data set, or they already have something present. But we are working on that fully automated cycle where we use some of those more powerful open source models that they won't have to send it to any API. Mm-hmm.
Question back there?
Yes. When it comes to decision making, I love the fact that we had some Minecraft example that the chatbot gave us. What is the margin error that D-Lite kind of provide when it comes to relying on chatbot to make a decision?
Yeah, absolutely. So your question is essentially, to what degree do we want to rely on the chatbot to actually make the decision for us, right? So that's been one of the big things that we have worked on, and that has informed our user experience, user interface with our platform. So we want to make sure that the chatbot is there kind of side saddling with you, not making decisions for you, but helping inform you to make decisions, right? So that's kind of gone into this interface where we really have it as an add-on to the web page, a helpful assistant rather than something that's doing everything for you. And then additionally, we have the ability to provide feedback on how a model is performing. So at the granular level of an individual response, a user can say, hey, this is a good response, this is a bad response. And then if it is a bad response, the user has the ability to then input, okay, this is what the response should have been, kind of initiating that reinforcement learning with human feedback kind of loop in a much more natural way than just sitting down and asking questions, providing feedback, using some of the tools available now. Thank you.
Could you
So we used the, actually let me pull it up. As far as custom word embeddings or anything like that, in the training code, we have this utilities script. So we used the same vocabulary that the model originally had, so GPT-2 originally has, but we did add a few tokens, similar to actually if you look at the way that Dolly was trained. We added a few tokens that help the model kind of hone in on where does the instruction start, where does my response start. So it performs a little bit of prompt engineering on the back end, and those look essentially like this. So 3 hash symbols end, 3 hash symbols instruction, 3 hash symbols response. So that allowed the model to increase its focus on where it needs to really think about the problem and where it needs to respond to the problem.
Can you describe how context from the web page is influencing the responses from the model?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the version that I showed you here, the context from the web page is not scraped, but we do have the ability to essentially pull the text from the web page using using our platform to be able to seed that model with, hey, here's information about the current, we're working within some CRM tools and things like that, so here's information about the current customer that we're talking about. Here's information about the Wikipedia page that you're on. So you go in and you say, hey, I want a summary of this. You hit play. The model has an understanding of where you are, what context the page you're in is, and then provides that information kind of with the question to the chatbot. Great question. Absolutely. So the question was about adding, the ability to do responsible AI, understand how the model actually came to the decisions that it did. That's a great question. It's still a very, very open question with LLMs. Unfortunately, the capabilities are increasing like this, whereas the, explainability and the interpretability is increasing like this, right? So we are very, very conscious of, how are these models making the decisions? How do we check them? How do we make sure that they're not kind of going off the rails? Are they saying things that they really shouldn't? Unfortunately, it's kind of a case-by-case basis because different customers, different organizations have different needs and different protocols for doing all of that. So right now, we don't have a single universal way of doing that, unfortunately. Could you say that a little louder, please? Absolutely, yeah. So the follow-on was, what do you think the need for this in the industry is? I think it's multifaceted, right? Because some organizations you want to work quickly, build something out quickly, and it really depends on what kind of context you're deploying this thing in. Sometimes you just need the model to get you started, right? If you need something to help you get over writer's block. That's not as critical as, hey, I'm doing security analysis in my SOC and I'm doing cybersecurity. I need to get this right? So that's another reason for the case-by-case basis. But I would say in general, if we can make a breakthrough in that space, it would be beneficial for everybody, right?
What's the inferencing throughput to get to the game?
I'm sorry?
What's the inferencing throughput to get to the game?
I'm not sure. I can look that up if you want to talk after this. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. So right now, everything that's been instilled in the model has been with that original training set that OpenAI used to train GPT-2, and then with the Databricks Dolly 15K data set. So there definitely are situations where this model could, talk about things that it shouldn't. It needs to be checked, and there need to be additional safeguards put in place to use this model in production. This is not something that we, advise just saying, hey, we're going to build an app around it, we're going to ship it, and we're not going to think about it, right? Just like with any of these large language models, a lot of care needs to be taken to make sure that these are deployed for good and they're used, beneficial to everyone.
Is there any potential to use a vector database to pull additional context at the time of prompting for things that might not be present in the original question and answer training set?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm guessing you're thinking about LangChain or one of those tools. Yep. So these are compatible with those technologies.
So one additional comment on LangChain. So typically, of course, the performance of the LangChain is going to be dependent on the ability for that chat agent to effectively route tasks. So this is an open area of research that we're currently exploring right now, is what is the ability of a model that is really best served as a specialist to effectively route tasks. And ultimately what we're hoping to develop is a lightweight specialty task router. Yes, sir, in the back.
So have we looked into any security features to prevent that? Not yet, not right now. So essentially that's how, I'm sure you're familiar with like the pile data set and all those big data sets. A lot of them are gathered in a very similar manner as that. So, for a lot of web pages, you can go ahead and inspect the HTML, inspect all of that there. So essentially, we're just leveraging that capability using Beautiful Soup and Python. Any other questions?
What's the best way to interact with that model?
Right now, I would recommend, so this model right here, the one that I just made public. So the best way to interact with it would be, this isn't necessarily the best way, but it's available on Hugging Face. So if you have a Python environment, you can download and start playing with the model immediately using the transformers package. So right here tells you everything you need to know to kind of get it up and running and start using it. So it's usable in like a Jupyter Notebook environment.
I think we got to get off.
All right. Cool.
All right.
Thank you,
It looks like
everyone.
we're out of time, but thank you all so much and enjoy the rest of the conference.